Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome to Get Super with Joshy G. I am super excited for today's episode. Why? Because I feel like this is the biggest guest that we've had. Seth Rollins is who? Seth Rollins who? Becky Lynch who? It's the one and only Marvel film producer Nate Moore, my best friend, is in the house joining us. So if you guys have some questions, we can't wait to hear them because we have Paul moderating with us today as well. Paul, what's going on? How you doing today, buddy?
Hey guys, I'm doing well. I'm on no sleep. I have a new puppy, an 8-week-old new puppy. So, you know, I'm awake. I think it's 4 o'clock, and I think it's Tuesday. So,
Well, I'm glad you've gotten some sleep, but not a lot. And then, of course, we have a workout that we're going to do a little bit later on in the show with the lovely, my girlfriend Jen Houston will be helping us go through that fun 9-minute workout. Of course, it's all accessible, no gym equipment whatsoever. So that's going to be fun. And during that workout, we're going to give away a 6-scale figure, the Dusty Deadpool by Sideshow. It is the Deadpool in the grayish suit, so that's going to be fun. But let's get to why we're all here, the one and only Nate Moore. Nate, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm good, man. How you doing, Josh?
Good. Nate,
What's going on with the elimination chamber? Is that a chair? You gonna hit me over the head with that? What's that?
buddy, I don't know if you know this, but in the Gallegos household, there are multiple event chairs from WWE. When you have people come over and, you have if it's Thanksgiving or any kind of family gathering, you got to get out these extra chairs. And who better than to have a chair with Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar or, and you pull these out. It's like a conversation piece.
Yeah, it's like the seat of honor for when you get your old folks coming over.
Exactly. How have you been? How are things going on with you and your lovely family?
Yeah, it's good, man. Look, it's we're all in lockdown like everyone else, but my two little daughters are just happy to have their dad home half the time, and we're watching movies and having fun and playing dress up. The usual.
The usual. Now, what movies are you watching at home with the daughters?
Well, they're young, so they like such popular movies like Daniel Tiger's Family Vacation.
Okay.
We're just getting them into Toy Story. You might have seen Toy Story. Yeah, they don't have the longest attention spans in the world, so they got about 10 minutes at a time.
That's awesome. Well, it's fun to kind of rehash those old memories. I'm assuming that you were a big Toy Story fan growing up. Maybe, yes, no?
I like Toy Story 3. I got to say, I'm a Monsters, Inc. guy.
Oh, fun fact. I did
Yeah.
not know you were a Monsters, Inc. guy.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, that Toy Story 4, they should have just stopped at 3 because 4...
You don't like Forky? I love Forky. Are you kidding me?
They didn't need it. I'll put it that
way. You're missing out. I think you're missing out on Forky.
Well, guys, I don't know if you know this, but Nate and I have known each other for quite a long time. We're best buds. We actually met on the set of Spider-Man 2, starring the one and only Mr. Tobey Maguire and Alfred Molina. And how was that, Nate? You kind of grew up being a comic book fan, at least from what I know of you. What were some of your favorite comic books growing up as a child that you loved to read?
Yeah, I grew up a big time Claremont X-Men guy. Like that was my jam. So X-Men, X-Factor, X-Force, New Mutants, all that stuff. That's what I loved. And I remember back in the day, remember Wizard Comics when they would do sort of the casting calls and you'd get them, you'd be like, oh yeah, man, I can't believe they're going to make that one day. And they never made a third of what was in there. But
who did you think was going to be Wolverine?
Ooh, I want to say at one point in Wizard they had Danny DeVito as a Wolverine candidate because of his size, because they were going like, yeah.
Danny DeVito.
But I remember for a long time, it was going to be Doug Ray Scott, and then he ended up in Mission Impossible 2 and couldn't make it, so they found that new guy, Hugh Jackman, who turned out to be. What's that?
What does he do? What has he done lately?
Exactly. That was it was interesting. Hugh Jackman is awesome, but he's also really tall, so you never got the sawed-off little runt Wolverine. You just got like a super ripped, amazing Wolverine.
So Wolverine, X-Men comics. Growing up, that was your jam. What else besides comic books? Were you in a lot of pop culture things? Obviously I was a big pro wrestling fan, but what other pop culture things were you into growing up?
I was into pro wrestling back in the day. I went to a Royal Rumble, came to Fresno, California, which I attended And I think the winner of that Royal Rumble, no, the winner of the championship match at that Royal Rumble was Bret Hart. And I remember because I ran downstairs from my seat in the balcony and pushed through a bunch of people and got into the aisle and came this close to touching the championship belt, which was my brush to fame with wrestling.
What a fan. I didn't realize that you wanted to meet Bret Hart so bad that you
Oh,
raced
yeah.
out to try to touch the
Oh
champion.
yeah, man. But no, I wrestling Dungeons and Dragons. I used to play Dungeons and Dragons.
Huge Dungeons and Dragons fan base here at Sideshow Collectibles.
Yeah, no, it was a.
Oh, yeah.
I still remember. I've actually tried to find a game, not seriously, but I have a couple friends who play like in the Valley. I think it's kind of fun to find the dice and get back out there and do a campaign, you know.
So from comic books, Dungeons and Dragons, pro wrestling,
Video games.
you go to college. You go to college, UCLA. You start to get your foot into the movie industry, right?
Right.
Where did you start off when you what was your very first job in the movie industry?
My first job in Hollywood, I was an intern at Columbia Pictures. So I worked for free for 2 years and drove from UCLA, which is in Westwood, to Culver City, where Sony's located. And I made coffee and I got donuts and I made copies of scripts and sort of sat there and watched as they started making, I kid you not, Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man movie. And so it was pretty exciting because they were developing at the time a Luke Cage movie with the director of Boys in the Hood, Singleton. So Singleton was in the office a lot. It was sort of right at that cusp of like maybe comics were going to be a big thing. And they ended up hiring me the week I graduated college. So I worked there for 2 years as an assistant.
That's awesome.
And sort of got to see the industry at a time where like business was booming. People were going to the movies. Scripts were selling for a lot of money, literally daily. And again, it was right at that cusp of like, hey, maybe this comic thing's going to work.
Now, as these movies, these popular comic book movies were coming into play, you're obviously still reading these books. Did you find it hard to like want to suggest certain things that maybe you might want to see in the movie, or do you just kind of sit back and be like, oh, I'm just going to let them do their thing and only?
No,
were you vocal at all with your ideas, or did you just kind of sit back and watch all of it happen?
I sat back a lot, but I worked for a woman named Shannon Golding, who was the executive on Spider-Man. And she actually got me back into comics because at the time, like in college, I didn't read books. I didn't really have time. But when I started working for her, she would have me go to the comic store every week and just pull comics. Because again, they were trying to figure out what comics could be movies, what are some great ideas. And so I started just to read comics and bring her ideas or tell her about stories or tell her about books I thought would be cool. And one of those books ended up being 30 Days of Night, which they ended up making at Sony, and she was the exec on it. And it was just because she was curious about comic culture, you know.
First of all, what a great book, right?
Yeah.
That was just an awesome book at the time. And then was that Sam Raimi's company that ended up making that movie?
It was Sam Raimi's, yeah.
Grant Curtis and all them?
Yep.
That's
awesome. And Grant, as you know, worked on Spider-Man 1 and 2 with Sam, and now actually works for Marvel. So I sort of come back full circle. And is working on a show for us.
And then came Spider-Man 2, and that's where our friendship developed, right? That's where the magic happened. That's where
right.
the bromance blossomed into what it is today. And that was such a fun movie to work on. And you know, despite the movie itself, as your career started to blossom, what was it like to kind of work on the second Spider-Man movie, the sequel to it? Like you're starting to kind of cut a niche for yourself in the movie industry.
Yeah, I mean, look, I wasn't a film student and I didn't go to film school. So to some degree, that time on set was my film school. And you learn about all the craftspeople that it takes to get these big movies off the ground. You have not only your director and your writers and your actors, but the grips and the electrics and the on-set painters and the prop people. And you sort of see all these people who are experts in their field coming together with a shared vision to make a film. It was pretty impressive. And you also realize how much time it takes to shoot these movies. You know, we were there for a long time. We had a hiatus. We had to come back and do the sort of lab sequence. I remember we were, you know, in that water tank for a long time. Like it was, you know, it's a lot of work, even though it seems, it kind of seems fancy, but it's not. You know, when you're making the movie, it's very blue collar.
Well, I will say that you were, in a way, Paul, I don't know if you know this, but I worked kind of under Nate for a little bit on that movie, and he was a fantastic boss and taught me many life lessons that we don't need to get into. But let's just say Nate was a fantastic boss, and now I can see
Did
why
I try to fire Josh? I maybe tried to fire Josh. Sure, sure.
he fired me for the day, Paul. He fired me for the day to teach me a lesson. It was a very fun and humbling experience.
There you go. It's just a lesson, not a firing.
It wasn't a firing. It was definitely a lesson. Though at the time, I thought for sure I was done. I wasn't going to work in Hollywood ever again. Nate eventually taught me the lesson. Okay, so that now Spider-Man's over, and now kind of the real fun begins. I know that being a comic book fan, Marvel Studios was probably the holy grail of all the jobs. But you did some small things in between then.
Yeah, I went off, and we were PAs on an independent movie, The Dying Golf, if you remember.
Yeah.
And then it was a while before I made it back to Marvel. I ended up working for an independent film company called Participant Media, which still exists, and made movies there. Then went to a foreign sales company called Exclusive Media, made movies there. And so there was about 6 or 7 years between being a PA and actually coming back to Marvel in 2010. And it was sort of chance. Marvel had just made Iron Man 1. They were looking to expand their team. And I just happened to have a friend who knew someone who worked at Marvel, who I called out of the blue and said, "Hey, I heard you guys are looking to expand. Do you think I'd be good?" And he put my resume in front of Kevin Feige. And Kevin saw that I'd, again, made a bunch of independent movies, but it was actually the bottom of my resume where it said PA Spider-Man 2 that got him curious enough to bring me in for an interview. And from then on, I've been here and trying to make movies,
Trying, you've definitely succeeded. And again, from Marvel, we know that your resume is quite the resume of movies, whether they be financial successes, box office successes, or award season successes. You definitely knocked all of your movies out of the park. But before we get into that stuff, let's go back to some of the things that you love pop culture wise. Now that you are out of the PA world and you're in Marvel and you're starting to kind of make a little bit more money, are you still collecting comics? Are you still collecting things? And if so, what are you collecting?
I still collect comics, much to my wife's dismay. We have a big old rack in the garage of all my long boxes of A, the books I used to have, but B, I still collect books now. Still X books, Avengers comics. I love, I grew up reading Marvel. It just happened to be, so I'd never read a ton of DC stuff. I don't dislike it. I just never got into collecting it. But the Marvel stuff, especially Avengers, Thor, X-Men, Captain America, still even Doctor Strange now I think is really good.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think they've done a lot of good stuff with him lately. The last 5 years, I would say, his books got really good.
Paul is our comics aficionado. I don't know if you know this. He hosts a show called Comics Hall. I only read a select things, but I feel like Paul is the encyclopedia and knows it all. And in that sense, Paul, are there any comics that you're reading that maybe you want to suggest to Nate, and vice versa?
It's funny that Nate brings it up. I grew up the exact opposite. I grew up primarily reading only DC, and only in the last couple of years have I gotten into Marvel. But you're completely correct. Doctor Strange is my favorite character in Marvel's catalog overall. And the recent Mark Waid, some of Mark Waid stuff that he's done. I also Jason. I just burned through all of Jason Aaron's run.
Yeah, Jason's run was really good.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a whole lot of great comics out there. Some of the Daredevil stuff that's out right now by Chip Zdarsky is really great. I've just kind of grown to love a lot of the really weird stuff that I think Marvel has been doing. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the Avengers and I love seeing them take on Celestials and see all this stuff tie in from my outside world to the world that's inside this comic book. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm the one to recommend any comic book to him. I think he should be recommending them all. I'm going through a bunch of Scott Snyder's catalog over at DC.
Sure.
I've read Metal, his Metal run, and everything. But yeah, I mean, I completely get it. I feel like my girlfriend, every single time I bring home new books, I was like, I promise it'll pay off in the future.
Right.
I mean, Nate is a prime example of that paying off, in the sense that, look, I know there's a lot of film students out there that think that, being a PA, it can be a crap job, and sometimes it can be. And I know I use my job as a PA as an experience and use the, some of the circumstances that were thrown my way to my advantage. And I think, Nate, you were also the prime example of that. You just didn't look at it as a job. You looked at it as an experience. Am I right? I mean, there are times where, you get handed a coffee cup and you're like, hey, go fill this up. And sometimes those jobs kind of suck. But if you look at it and be like, man, I'm working on this really cool movie set, and you take those experiences and use them for later on in life, I always feel like, they always
Yeah,
mold
and
you who you are.
I think to some degree too, I didn't have a ton of expectation. Like I wasn't impatient and thinking, okay, well, I got to get out of here because I don't want to be a PA forever. I want to go direct a movie. I felt kind of happy to be there.
Yeah.
I think my attitude was different than some of the people that we worked with who were just itching to get out of there. For me, it was like, man, I'm meeting a bunch of new people who are super cool. I get to be around this thing that I never thought I'd get to be around. I just felt like lucky to be on the lot every day.
Yeah.
And I think people feel that if you're putting out an energy of wanting to be a part of a group and wanting to help and have a good attitude and don't feel like anything is beneath you, people wanted to help me learn. Like Grips wanted to help me learn how to tie grip knots, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean. And so even I think from an attitude standpoint, I think that was a good experience because I didn't have a chip on my shoulder about not wanting to do it. I was like, well, if that means I get to come here tomorrow and see what they do, that's worth it.
And I think too that goes with most of the PAs that we worked with. I think that was, I mean, I've worked on some movie sets as well, and to see kind of a PA staff that wanted to learn how to tie grip knots or help out the electrical, even the catering or craft services, like
Yep.
it was a small, tight knit family, and the fact that everyone kind of looked out for one another, you don't really see that on a lot of movie sets. I mean, I haven't been on a movie set in forever, but I'm just saying that particular one was super, super special. Yes, obviously it's Spider-Man 2, Tobey Maguire, Alfred Molina, all this cool, props and sets and all that stuff was amazing to be a part of, but also the family that it brought together. I mean, you, Judd, and Rich, who happen to also be my really good friends, we all met on that set, and it was just fun to be a part of that and to see now what you've become is even more fulfilling to know that all kind of came from that.
And I remember there was one PA who had a big crush on you and who wore an I Love Joshy G t-shirt, which I thought was, notable.
Yeah, that was real funny. She was just trying to copy my I Love Grandma shirt. I'll put it that way.
I don't know if that was it. I think she had a little Josh fever.
Paul, make sure that we strike that from the record.
Consider it stricken?
Yes, consider it
struck.
Before we get into any questions for Nate, again, just a friendly reminder, we got a fun workout with Jen Houston. A little bit later, we're going to be giving away a Dusty Deadpool. I'm going to be giving away a super top secret code that even Nate Moore doesn't even know.
What?
And that will give you 1,000 entries into our Gleam contest. Now, you can ask Nate questions on all of our social media platforms, and we'll get to some of those. Paul, do we have any questions we can ask Nate from our wonderful audience?
We sure do. Yeah, we had some folks already that are commenting on your excellent taste, Nate, in comic books, and I could agree. People are asking if you're reading all of Hickman's run right now. If and that's a question, I guess. That was Eric over on YouTube. I'm gonna hijack this question a little bit as a comic book fan because I am curious. When you read stuff like this, that's got it's got one big title, and then it has 400 spin-off titles.
Yeah.
Do you try to keep up with all of them, or do you pick and choose? Because I'm a binge everything type of person where it's like I'm going to invest my time and money in these, for a little bit. Or do you like to just read what you want, like Xcalibur, and then you just read this smaller bit and this other?
No, I read everything. Yeah, especially something like that. It's sort of similar when Hickman took over all the Avengers books for a bit, and they were all kind of connected. Like I kind of want to see the bigger story because I know he's probably planting things in each book that are going to pay off. So Dawn of X, I've been reading everything, all the offshoot books. I think the flagship X-Men book and New Mutants are my two favorites so far.
Right.
In just the characters and the tone. And again, they're both written by Hickman, so no surprise. And some of the secondary books, I'm having a little trouble getting into Excalibur. I want to like it more because it's got characters I love, like Gambit and Rogue.
Right.
But I'm also like, I love Captain Britain, and I don't know if Betsy Braddock is Captain Britain. Like, there's a lot of choices that I struggle with, but no, I'm reading it all, man. I love it all.
Do you find, I mean, I'm assuming the answer is yes, but I want to hear from you in the sense that like your comic book knowledge is very, very vast. And the fact that like you work for a comic book movie studio, do you find that that you having that knowledge is to your advantage when it comes to certain movies and projects and stuff that come across? Like, you know, there may be a guy that's sitting in that boardroom that may not know half of the stuff that you do. Do you find that that helps you? Or,
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, sometimes it's usually the little details that are helpful because the big characters or storylines, I think everybody kind of knows, or if you don't know, it's very easy to find. But
Mhm.
sometimes little character details can be really meaningful when you're talking about movies. So, because I've not just read sort of the bio of a character, but I've probably read a lot of their books, and a lot of that stuff just sticks in your head, those little cool details. Sometimes those things are really fun to add to a writer's room, or when you're pitching a filmmaker or something like that.
it's kind of like us at Sideshow, right, Paul? I mean, there'll be some statues or some PCS figures where, you know, obviously the big picture is Doctor Strange, it's Captain America, but it's the little
Right.
small details that if you're a fan, if you know those things and you look at it and you're like, oh my God, look at that little hidden gem or that Easter egg. It kind of makes it fun, for especially for the super fans out there. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate that you pay that much attention to that, Nate. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, and I can say, I think, coming from a comic book perspective and someone who works in, like me and Josh, we both work in the pop culture field. We work for Sideshow. Like I mean, I can say that I personally and everyone else that's watching appreciates when the movies that we are watching are being made by people who would be doing this on their free time, even if they weren't being paid to do it.
Right.
I mean, that means quite a bit. So we do have a couple of other questions for you, Nate. These ones are a little bit more specific from people who apparently are who have studied your catalog of what you worked on, and they have some questions here. The first one is in regards to Civil War,
Uh-huh.
and basically they just want to know what was you can say one of the biggest challenges you can think of while working on that film, and how did you find yourself overcoming it?
Yeah, look, Civil War was interesting because we were coming off of Winter Soldier, and that sort of, I think, rebooted interest in Cap to a way, because people all of a sudden were more excited than they were, I would say, probably coming off of First Avenger. And we were trying to figure out what is the great big story we wanted to tell. And when you read Civil War, even now, a lot of the details obviously are much different than what's in the film, because we didn't have certain concepts in the MCU. We didn't have certain characters because, especially back then, we didn't have the Fox characters. There are a lot of things we couldn't touch. So part of adapting it was, how do you take the spirit of something and leave behind a lot of the details that are on the page, and still make it something that feels like Civil War? And ultimately, I think it's really distilling down the arguments to Cap and Tony, who we did have access to. So even though you don't have the Negative Zone prison, you don't have the Punisher, you don't have Cloak teleporting people out of there, you can't
Right.
kill Bill Foster, you don't have Hercules, like, you don't have a lot of the elements that make it Civil War in the comics. But I think tonally and ideologically, that film is very much a companion piece to what's on the page. And
Right.
the other big challenge, I think, is in a movie called Civil War, not losing sight that it's a Captain America movie. But that
Right.
we had some help in, because we knew we wanted to complete the story of the Winter Soldier, and that's a very Cap-centric subject. So even though Civil War, there's a ton of Tony Stark in it, and there should be, we still, striking the balance to make sure it felt like a Cap movie and not an Avengers movie was tricky, but I think we managed to do it.
I think you did a fantastic job. It's one of my favorite movies. But speaking of Civil War and fights, I always ask this to all of my previous guests. Ironically, all of my previous guests were professional wrestlers, but I'm going to ask you the same. If you were to book your own pop culture WrestleMania main event, what would it be? It could be anything. It could be Wolverine versus Thanos. It could be Superman versus the Hulk. Whatever you think would draw people to a Nate Moore WrestleMania main event, what would it be and why?
And is it wrestling rules, or is it any rules?
It could be whatever you want it to be, Nate Moore. It's just the main event of pop culture WrestleMania.
Well, look, selfishly, and I think this is a fight the DC and Marvel fans will never agree on, but Captain America versus Batman would seem to be a very interesting fight that I think people are going to be very invested emotionally on both sides, because I think those characters are people's favorite characters for very different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the people who like those characters think they would win for very specific reasons. Obviously, Captain America would win. But I do like to, sort of humor Batman fans who think that he stands a chance, because he doesn't.
Wow, those sound like fighting words. How many people left the chat now, Paul? Because
yeah, it's just us three now. So
cleared the room with that one, huh?
No, but that's a great main event. I mean, a lot of people have said some different things, but I like your psychology behind that answer. Is that that there's a lot that goes into Cap versus Batman, and it's not just like who's stronger, who can lift the most weight, blah blah blah. There's a lot of psychology that goes into that, and I think that's really cool.
And Batman's crazy, so he's gonna lose.
Batman is crazy.
Does Batman have Alfred in his corner, or I'm just kidding? I'm just joking. A couple more questions before we let the man head on out to play with his kids and watch Toy Story 4.
Yeah, Nate. So we have a good question. We're going to go on the other side of the geeky fence here over DC. Question from Owen over in the Let Your Geek Sideshow Facebook group. He wants to know. He realized that you're not a big DC fan, or not, inherently, but is there a DC property that you would personally either love to just see brought to screen, or you would love to help work on? Unless those are two very separate things.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I did read some DC books growing up, and I've gone back to read some DC books. I always loved Justice League International.
Oh yeah,
that cast is amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, that is, and the tone of those books was so good. Because I always felt like I grew up watching Super Friends. I love the Justice League. I love Justice Society. But when you have Guy Gardner and Blue Beetle and Booster Gold and Fire and Ice, and Captain Atom, that motley crew is so much fun, and I think could be its own thing. And I think because it doesn't take itself seriously, would stand outside of anything that we've done even. But doesn't have to be Deadpool either. I think there's a lane there for that property.
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool. And you could reinterpret some of those characters and make them completely new for the film, or you could be totally beholden to how they were brought to life on the page. But I do think that sort of run was pretty untouchable.
Did you ever read The Superior Foes of Spider-Man? Kind of on the same vein, where there was a bumbling cast of villains that were trying to, steal a portrait of Dr. Doom's face. It was kind of,
and it was Boomerang, and it was all those. Yeah, it's the sort of the second tier.
Yeah, it was Shocker, Boomerang. I forget the other two, but yeah, they were just they would
female Beetle. Yeah. No, that was good stuff too, for sure. I just felt like Justice League International, because it was supposed to be on par. It was a little bit like Avengers West Coast, but probably better.
Mm-hmm.
In that there's have the name Justice League, so you should be the most powerful, have your shit together team, but they just didn't, and they hated each other for reasons that made sense. And all those characters were so. I mean, Guy Gardner's such a great Green Lantern, all that stuff. I would love to play with that. That's just great.
Yeah, I mean that would be absolutely incredible. I think that leads to another question that we have over on Instagram, because we are streaming everywhere, guys. So sorry, there's a lot of windows to watch, but we'll try to get to as many questions as possible here. From Gohan over on Instagram, he wants to know, if you could choose any comic book story to bring to the big screen, which would you love?
Right.
Now, does it have to be Marvel or DC? Can it be any independent comic, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I assume so. I mean, I'm sure there's some, some great Valiant Image stuff.
Image, yeah. I mean, Image. It's funny. Image. At one point, I was all about Wildcats and Stormwatch and
Powers. I loved Powers. That Image?
Powers was great. Yeah.
Powers was great. Yeah.
And I never saw the show. I actually heard the show's pretty good. I never saw it because I think it was on a weird platform.
It was on the PlayStation Network, which
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm thinking.
I love the Authority, and the Authority before DC sort of merged it into the DC continuity.
Right.
I always thought that was really cool, and some of their stories were great. I mean, to me, the biggest, the seminal wow, comics can be bigger than a single some of their parts was Secret Wars, which I'm not sure holds up.
Yeah.
But I remember as a kid, every month when those issues would come out, and it would be the Hulk is carrying a mountain, or the X-Men Strike Back, all of those 12 issues seemed to have a big event tied to them, and I loved them. I actually went back and read the whole 12 issues a couple years ago, and it doesn't really hold up. But if you could figure out a way to do Secret Wars today, I think that'd be pretty fun.
We have a note from one of the producers of Sideshow that said Transmetropolitan needs to happen.
Transmetropolitan, yeah, that's really good. And you know what is top 10? What was the one? What was it called? I'll have to look it up. There was another indie press one that I was like, oh, that was really good.
See what you did now, Paul? Now,
yeah, I was like, yeah, this is what any conversation looks like in the Sideshow office.
Fun fact also about Nate, big time video game fanatic.
Oh, wow.
There were some brutal Marvel versus Capcom 2s and 3 battles between him and myself growing up. Nate, who is your Marvel versus Capcom team?
It was Captain America and Cyclops, I think.
Yeah.
Back then.
It looks like, Nate, the chat might have helped us out. Top 10 by Alan Moore and Gene Ha.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a great book.
The Alan Moore book. Yeah. I think my question whenever this gets asked is I would love to see like a really good adaptation of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing.
Sure.
That's like that real weird, dark Swamp Thing. I think that I feel like he doesn't get enough love. And Booster Gold. I love Booster Gold with all my heart.
Booster Gold's good. Yeah. Booster Gold's great. No, I grew up in a lot of arcades. So stand-up arcade games I love, and then as consoles became more complicated and I got older, honestly, like I have like Xbox now, I'd be lost. But back in the day, I had an Atari, I had a Commodore 64, I had all the consoles, and then I started to lose. I lost the finger dexterity. I can't do it.
I got little Joey Gallegos upstairs playing Call of Duty, and it makes my brain melt because I'm like, I wouldn't last 5 seconds in Call of Duty. But put Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition in front of me, and I'll murder him.
GoldenEye, I'm sure I could hang with Joseph on GoldenEye, but that's about it.
These graphics look awful. A couple more questions, Paul, and then we'll let Nate go.
Yeah, we had a lot of questions, especially on your in regards to your work on Black Panther, because it's such that movie is so important and so incredible for so many reasons. So one of them, which I'm also, again, I'm super curious at all of these, I think, is, are there any elements of the Christopher Priest run on Black Panther that you weren't able to include in the MCU, but you would still love to see incorporated?
I wouldn't say weren't able to include. I would say didn't get to in that movie. Right. I think, to me, Christopher Priest, from a character standpoint, is the seminal Black Panther run, because I always thought he sort of almost more than anyone understood the balance, the notion that T'Challa was constantly having to sacrifice his personal relationships because he was both a king and a superhero, and he was always trying to please either Wakanda or the world, but it tended to be his personal relationships with like Monica Lynn or Everett Ross or Shuri wasn't really a big part of it yet. Ramonda, that were always in jeopardy. Even, he had, I don't know if you remember that he fought Iron Fist once and had an aneurysm, and he knew that he was carrying an aneurysm for like 4 issues and he didn't tell anybody. Like, there's great stuff in there about sacrifice and about being a hero for other people at great personal cost that I don't think anyone's ever done as well as Christopher did. And I told Christopher this. We had a roundtable that I think is on the Panther DVD, and we had Christopher Priest and some of the other writers, and I don't think anyone ever quite defined the character in the way that he did. I always think his run is the best.
Right. Yeah.
I have a question regarding Black Panther, Nate, and I don't think I've ever asked you this, but obviously it was nominated for an Academy Award. You got to go to the Academy Awards all dressed up. And I know a couple of people won some Academy Awards, best costume design, I believe. And your name is called out in, on this award show, coming from, an intern, a PA, writer's assistant, all these things that you did. And now you're sitting on the grandest stage of them all. And yet hearing your name being uttered by people who are winning on a movie that you helped produce, how did that feel to you? Did you feel in a sense of accomplishment? Tell me how that felt in that moment.
Yeah, it was surreal. I got to be honest. Like, it was not expected. Both Hannah Beekler, our production designer, and Ruth Carter, our costume designer, who did that, did not have to do that. At no point did I think they would do that. So I felt really grateful that they recognize my contribution. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm there every day and was really proud to be a part of that team. But at no point did I ever expect that. And you really had people talk about out of body experiences. That was one where I was floored. And I didn't know how to react, but it was really special. Yeah. It really was.
Well, I know watching that, I was very, very proud of you. So that's cool to hear that other people thought so highly of you as I do.
Yeah.
All right, Paul, what do we got? One more question for Nate. Let's make it a good one.
Yeah, I saved this one for last because it's the one being asked all over. Is of all of the Marvel properties that you have worked on, which has been your favorite and why, Nate?
That's like asking which child of his is his favorite. How dare you, audience? How dare you?
I have parents and they have a favorite. And
yeah, what is it? Nate, you don't have to answer that, but seriously, which one was your favorite?
Yeah.
No, I would say, look, they all hold a different place in my heart for different reasons. Winter Soldier will always be the first one I did. And that, I mean, I didn't frankly know what I was doing. A lot of people didn't know what that movie could be. So in making that movie, there was something special about it because we felt like we were trying to redefine a character in a way that would surprise audiences. And I think we did. Civil War was special because I will always remember the first day we had all 10 heroes on the tarmac fighting each other, and the crew started to tear up. And this is a crew that had worked with these characters individually or you know, one or two at a time, but it was people's fantasy come to life. And a film crew is a pretty, again, blue collar kind of stoic group of people, but you realized it could be special because if it was making these people feel that way, audiences were going to feel that way tenfold. And Panther, I think, you know, Ryan Coogler and I would talk a lot about the importance that movie might have, both if it was done well or if it wasn't done well. And so there was a weight to that was different than the other two movies, because if the movie didn't work for some reason, we were always going to be worried that it would set, frankly, movies with black faces back if it didn't. And so when it did work and we saw that people, regardless of race, kind of embraced the movie, I mean, there's nothing more special than that. So I can't pick between all three of my kids, but I love them all for different reasons. That's
a great answer. Though I was expecting the Dying Gall to be number one, but I'll take that answer. I'll take that answer as a close second.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, Nate. I know you got to go. I appreciate it. Is there anything that you would like to plug? Do you have a Twitch channel that you want everybody to watch you kick people's butts for Marvel vs. Capcom 2, perhaps, or no?
No Twitch channel. Look, I thank you so much for having me. You know, it's really a pleasure to talk to you guys. You know, I hope that we all get to see each other in movie theaters soon, and that we can all, you know, I think watching movies from home is great. I know the collective experience of going to a movie is greater. So yeah. I just hope sooner rather than later, we all run into each other and can go celebrate our next favorite movie.
Especially with that iconic laugh of yours. There's nothing better than to hear you laugh. You're like, oh, Nate's in this place. So again, Nate, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. Please tell your lovely wife and kids I said hi, and hopefully I'll see you very, very soon.
All right, guys. Thanks, everyone.
See you, buddy.
See ya.
Well, Nate is gone, but the fun just started. Paul, how was the people love Nate in the chat?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, how could you not? He's such a great man. And to know, like I'd said, you know, as a completely putting my professionalism aside, putting my best nerd foot forward, it's great to know that someone, you know, of his knowledge in comic books and someone so nice at making these movies that are so important to so many people. It's great.
Yeah. And he's just such a wonderful human being. And I'm glad that he was able to be a part of, you know, this fun show that we get to put together every Tuesday, which is supposed to be about working out. But like I've said before on numerous shows, it's an array of pop culture, and it's from pro wrestling to comic books to fitness. It's all the things that I incorporate into Dead Boys Fitness, and I'm glad that I get to bring it to an entirely different platform. And speaking of, we're about to get ready to do some working out. Don't worry, guys. It won't be long. It's scheduled to be 9 minutes long. I have my girlfriend, Jen, Houston as my assistant today, and hopefully Paul and somebody else that you know, some of the other producers of the show watching will do this workout later on. All right, so it's going to be a 9-minute workout, 3 different movements, and on the course of this workout, we're going to give away that super secret code that will give you 1,000 entries into our Gleam contest. Now we're giving away the Dusty Deadpool 6 scale by Sideshow. It's a really, really, really cool piece, especially if you love Deadpool. So yeah, if people are ready, Paul, then let's get right into it, shall we?
Let's do it.
And we got some furry friends, Matzo Balls, walking around. So there may be the on-screen debut of Matzo Ball. I will tell you now, she'll probably try to hump me, and I don't know if that's going to be, you know, family friendly for the viewers at home. But she's a big bulldog, and you know I can't stop her. So we got Jen. Jen, come on in. Say hi, everybody. There's Jen Houston with her cool Captain Marvel shirt. Now today's workout is an AMRAP. It's as many reps as possible. I'll get in here so I can describe it. As many reps as possible. Now it's an ascending ladder. Basically what that means is we're going to do 3 different movements. All movements you can do without weight. We're going to start off with air squats. I'll have Jen move over. A simple squat. The goal is to get that hip crease below parallel. As my girlfriend squats down, matzo ball, checking for depth. She's going to stand all the way up. That's considered a squat. Now, we have 2 chairs and a medicine ball. If for whatever reason you cannot squat all the way down, that's totally fine. You could squat to a chair or you can squat to a medicine ball, just like Jen's doing there. All right, so that's the first movement, is an air squat. The second movement is going to be called a chair dip or a couch dip. Basically, you're going to use a chair. You're going to put your hands on the chair. Your feet are going to be extended out, and you're going to lower yourself down to about as low as you can go, and you're going to push yourself right back up. That is a chair dip. All right? So chair dip, air squat, and the last and final movement, I'll move matzo ball out of the way, is a bicycle crunch. So you're going to go ahead and lay flat on the ground, and I'll try to move the camera here so you can see Jen. You're going to take your left elbow and get it to your right knee, and then your right elbow to your left knee. Now you're probably asking yourself, Josh, I can't move like that. You could just do 3 regular crunches, all right? Just crunching all the way, or about a quarter of the way up and back down. Or if you would like, you can do it an entire sit-up, sitting all the way up and laying right back down. Those are all considered good reps. So there's fun ways we can scale this workout. The first one obviously being the squats, squatting yourself to an object. The second one, bench dips or a couch dip, lowering yourself to about as low as you can go. And then the last and final movement is a bicycle crunch, crunches or sit-ups. We're going to start off with 3 reps. So it's going to go 3, 3, 3. Then we're going to go 6, 6, 6. Then we're going to go 9, 9, 9. As you can see, we're going to go up to 12, 15, however long we can go up in this ladder until time expires. Remember, it's only 9 minutes of work. Okay, Paul, are there any questions regarding the workout? If you guys have any questions for the lovely Jen, you could ask them after the workout.
As far as the workout goes, not right this second. I think everyone's just ready to get going.
All right, perfect. And remember, guys, I won't let you down. I'm gonna give away the secret code for that Dusty Deadpool. All right, I'm just gonna rearrange some things, and I'm going to start the clock. Do you guys have any questions? You said no? Perfect. All right. I'm going to do this with Jen, and hopefully my dog doesn't come and take over the show. If she does, that's totally fine. All right. Paul, are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. We got some time, less than 10 seconds. We're going to start off with some squats. I'm going to give you the side view. Jen's going to give you the front. All right, here we go. And 3, 2, 1, go. That's Holly, by the way, if anybody's asking. So 3 squats, 3 bench dips, and then 3. She's going to do bicycle crunches. I'm going to do sit-ups. 1, 2, 3. Now, you're going to do 6 reps of each. See how this goes, Paul?
Got it. We do have a question, Joshy. If you can answer it super fast, what is the benefit of doing these bicycle crunches rather than like regular crunches?
Again, it helps just different muscle groups. So you're working your obliques as well as your abs. You're twisting your trunk. Also, you're trying to not kind of crunch over, but you're twisting your trunk, trying to get that elbow to your knee. That makes sense. So you're not working just your abs, you're working your obliques as well.
All right.
4, 5, 6. Fun fact, my house has like 6 dogs. So 2, 3, 4. Yep. So after 3, we're working on 9. And again, every week I try to introduce a new movement so folks can try some new movements out besides just regular sit-ups, regular crunches, hence the bicycle crunches. 7, 8, 9. And again, the goal of this is to keep moving for 9 minutes. If you are a super fit person, sprinting through this would be the way to go. If you're an average person, having a conversational pace like I'm doing right now. And if you haven't worked out in a very, very long time, just keep moving. That is the goal. 8, 9. Any more questions, Paul? I can answer them, I think.
Let me scroll through some of the many channels that we're streaming from. It does look like we do, not a question, but we do have someone that says they've been over on Instagram looking at the Dead Boys Fitness Instagram. They appreciate some of the videos you've been doing to help them keep fit while being home using like body weight workouts.
Yep. We have a fun challenge going on. Big Tony Cesaro, who was on the show a couple of weeks ago, he's a big Thanos fan. We're doing an Infinity Gauntlet challenge. And this week's Infinity Gauntlet challenge will be dropped on Friday. It's all body weight. And it is the Space Stone. So if you like challenges, 6 awful, grueling workouts, Big Tony's Infinity Gauntlet challenge is really, really rough. 2.
I think anyone working out and their name is Big Tony, I think I'm gonna be out of breath. I don't think I can keep up.
You saw him when he was on the show. He was jacked. He was ripped.
Oh yeah. I always go back for Joshy. Joshy knows this, but everyone else, I always go back and do these workouts after because right now I'm moderating. But yeah, I think man, watching myself do this versus these WWE superstars and Joshy, these workouts are no joke.
Look, I'm not gonna lie, these are hard workouts. But if you guys are doing these at home and just kind of, like I said, working through them at a conversational pace, something is always better than nothing. All right. Unfortunately, Nate is a very, very busy man. Otherwise, he'd be right with us doing it with Jen and myself. But again, Nate does these workouts. I do these workouts. All of these WWE wrestlers do these workouts. And the one and only Paul does these workouts as well.
Oh, jeez.
And speaking of superheroes, Jen is currently kicking my butt in this workout. I'm on 12 and she's flying through her set of 15. And now we're at the halfway point. So we're halfway done, guys. And speaking of, pay close attention because I'm going to give you that secret code here in a minute. How about any questions for Jen? Give Jen some questions.
Yeah, we did have a question a little bit earlier over on YouTube, I believe, and asked, is this, Jen, do you not work out so you can work out and do this? Or is this like your second, third, fourth workout of the day?
We worked out this morning already, so that's the still pace we're moving at right now.
Not from where I'm standing. You guys are flying through this.
Sure. Right. Yeah, she's flying. I'm like, ask me questions, Paul, so I can rest.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Now remember, again, if you cannot go all the way down as low as Jen and I, even just a quarter of an inch will do something as opposed to sitting on your couch and doing nothing at all. Again, I'm a firm believer of just doing something, whether it's walking around your block, taking the dogs for a walk, doing 50 jumping jacks in your room, something is always better than nothing, especially in these tough times when you're stuck indoors. The temptation of wanting to go out in places that you shouldn't. Just stay home, stay inside show, and get a good workout in, even if it's for 9 minutes.
Right. Exactly.
What number are you on? 18, Paul.
Oh,
18.
I'm not even convinced I can count that high.
Thank goodness Jen wanted to do this workout with me. Otherwise, I'd be all by myself. I would probably have to get a volleyball and have that volleyball be my workout partner. What was the name of that? What was the name of the guy? The ball on Castaway?
Wilson?
That's right, Wilson. Speaking of Wilson, that's it. Secret code, all caps. Wilson, baby. That is your secret code of the day. Enter that into your Gleam contest. 1,000 entries, 2 minutes left. Don't you dare leave. Don't you dare get out of this fun video. You stick around and ask us some questions before we get out of here. But Wilson is your secret code of the day. The group was probably like, how does this guy not know who Wilson is?
Get a lot of people saying, I'm not convinced this guy's ever watched Castaway.
He doesn't know who Tom Hanks is. All right, I'm on 18. Jen starting with 21?
Yep. Is that right? Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we got 90 seconds left. I'm going to try to fly through 18. 6. You hear snoring, by the way. That's matzo ball.
And for everyone asking across the various platforms, the secret code word, which again is Wilson, that can be entered once I go ahead and drop the link on all of our multiple channels. So just go ahead and hold on to that link, write it down. Remember, it is all caps. And then for our friends on Instagram, I will update the most recent Joshy G post with that link for you all.
1 minute left, guys.
Only 1 minute, guys.
2, 3, 6, 7, 8. I know, 9, 10. I want to make sure I do them right. 45 seconds left. Jen, flying through this. I'm trying to get 18 done in 40 seconds. 6, 7, 8. 20 seconds, Paul.
20 seconds. All right.
Last one for me. Trying to get to 21, 10 seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and time. Well, good job for those folks that did the workout. How did you do, Paul?
Oh, I did great. I watched the whole thing.
When are you gonna do it?
Oh, that's a tomorrow workout. I always do it the day after.
As long as you do it, that's all that counts.
Sure.
We have a couple of minutes left before the show is over. Are there any questions for me, Ms. Jen Houston, for Paul, before we get out of here?
Well, we did have some questions. I think this one can be applicable to both of you. This is coming from Instagram. This was a while ago, but I saved it. It was one, how are you both doing during quarantine? And also, are there any new hobbies or skills that you guys have picked up during this that you didn't think you would have done beforehand?
Go ahead. You can answer. You have an answer. I have an answer.
I think we're doing well.
I think we're doing awesome.
It's been nice to be in Las Vegas with Josh's family in a bigger house and a pool. New hobbies, I think we've been cooking way more than what we would normally be not cooking.
Yeah.
And it's been really fun.
I love Erwan as much as the next person, but man, we have cooked some fantabulous dishes, and that's right, it's not even a word, fantabulous, but fantastic dishes courtesy of the Half Baked Harvest Instagram and website. That place is awesome. If you're looking for some fun recipes, fun, easy recipes, I would strongly advise that because those are super fun.
TikTok.
TikTok. Who doesn't love TikTok?
Big new hobby.
Are there anything that you guys have any geeky properties that you guys have gone back and re-binged? I know you guys had both said during May the 4th you'd watched a bunch of Star Wars.
Yeah, we watched a bunch of Star Wars. It was my mom's birthday the other day, so we did everything vampires. I had to sit and watch Twilight, which is not my favorite property, but my family is a big geeky house. Not just me, not just Jen, but my brothers and my mom and my dad. So we watched some of that. We watched a little bit of the Mandalorian documentary on Disney Plus.
Oh, that's great.
And of course, we watched some pro wrestling, i.e. the WrestleMania, Money in the Bank, pay-per-view, or on their network as well. So it's fun to catch up on our friends who are wrestling there and watching some of the stuff that we love and enjoy on Disney Plus, Netflix, all that good stuff. But
That's
yeah,
awesome. We did have actually a question, if we can bounce back super fast, Joshy, about the workout. Someone asked, how many times would you recommend doing this particular workout a week?
That's actually a really good question. I get that question asked a lot. Why, can I do this workout 3 or 4 times a week? And the answer would be no. These workouts that I designed for Dead Boys Fitness and for Sideshow, they're meant to be retested at a later date. So for example, right, I only got, and I would say that I wasn't going at the fastest that I could go, but I only got into the round of 18:21. Jen surpassed that number. Now, the goal is to retest this later on after you're doing various workouts to see if you've gotten fitter. And that's kind of the great thing about Dead Boys Fitness is that we retest workouts, but we don't retest them like a week later or 2 weeks later. We always try to retest workouts 3 or 4 months later so people can see their progression, right? The goal is to start with a baseline of fitness and then work your way up that baseline. So, obviously Jen and I, we work out a lot, but there are some people out there that don't work out. So we like to kind of test these people's fitness, get a baseline. Perfect example, is a pull-up, right? A lot of people out there can't do pull-ups, but there are different scalable options or variations of a pull-up that you can do that will help you achieve that pull-up. So in the course of 6 months, and just like anything, it takes time and practice and all that good stuff. But, in the course of 6 months, you went from not doing a single pull-up to doing ring rows or doing bar rows or doing banded pull-ups or doing assisted pull-ups until eventually you get to that one pull-up. Now that is scientific proof that there is a progression and that over time you eventually got fitter or stronger or faster or healthier. So that's kind of how we program things when it comes to our workouts. Obviously, all of our workouts are scalable, but at the same time too, we will retest these workouts a little further down the line to help people say, oh man, I did that workout with Josh and Jen, on May 19th, and here it is August 19th. And they're like, oh my God, I got into the round of 27. That's the kind of results that we're looking for.
That is awesome. Yeah, I think that probably answers it in that, it's this one workout's not going to solve everything. It's all, you got to chip and chip and chip away.
It's just a work in progress, right? Just like us here at Sideshow, we're and Get Super. It's a work in progress. We can't have pro wrestlers on all the time. Well, if that is it, I'm glad you guys were able to join us. Again, I want to thank Nate Moore for joining us. Please, if you haven't already, which you should be all following Marvel Studios on all social media platforms. But, be on the lookout for some new releases, whether it be in the theaters or on Disney Plus, Marvel Studios, and Nate Moore. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Jen Houston. You can follow her on Instagram and social media. And thank you for being a lovely assistant when my 2 interviews they can't work out for whatever reason. Again, don't forget to enter that Gleam contest if you haven't already. This is at side.show/win-dusty-DP. Okay. And if any of you are interested in any other giveaways, we have a Collect Day May going on right now where we challenge you to show us your collectibles each day of the month to win a prize. Today is Office Buddy, meaning we want to see the collectibles that keep your office space unique. To win, the Wonder Woman Deluxe 6 scale by Hot Toys. Nate had a nice, lovely office in his home. He should have entered and he would have maybe won a Wonder Woman 6 scale. You know, who knows? But Paul will drop the link to that real quick in the chats right now. Paul, thank you so much for joining us, man. That was awesome.
Anytime. It's always good to, I love seeing the workout. It's easy to go back and rewatch it. And it was a pleasure to be able to talk to Nate and yourself, of course.
And any comic suggestions for Jen and I, please throw them our way, Paul. I appreciate it.
Oh, will do. I'll be blowing up your inbox.
You guys have been an amazing audience. Thank you so much. I got to go wake my dog up, who's continuing to snore right now. But remember, please stay in Sideshow and don't forget to let your geek side show. See you guys.
Hey, did you like that video? Be sure to subscribe by clicking the S icon on your screen and click that bell icon to be notified whenever a new video is posted. If you'd like more info on the items featured in this video, click the link provided under Product Info. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to let your geek side show.